Looks like we're all ready. Okay, happy Saturday. Happy week. Gosh, what week is this? Three? Week 3. Oh my gosh. There was some brilliant work going on this week. And like, it's been beautiful to see this app really start coming together and be like this complex yet clean bit of code that does exactly what it's supposed to do. And you all have really impressed me with how you're challenging yourselves. Like this week, I saw like some really incredible code, like using context, using custom hooks, using like all these like kind of like nifty and complex like methods to make this thing go in a very readable way. So very proud of you all. I did, Scott mentioned that there were like multiple branches and stuff. And yes, there are, because Leah and Leanne wanted to challenge themselves and they did it brilliantly. I held office hours on Thursday and they had completed their like core work for the week and hit all the acceptance criteria, but they still wanted to figure out context hook and like really take it the next step and see how they could get that into the app. So they branched off from their branch that they pushed up for their core work and implemented context too. And I saw that the other pair also implemented context. So you all did brilliant work this week. Context is something that's very hard to like wrap your head around if you've never used it before. So I hope that that was like a really good learning experience for you. And Leanne, I think I was encouraging you to, because she was looking for, she's like, I'm looking for context, like how to use context, and I can only find it like being used for this one kind of use case. And she's like, I'm not seeing it used in a way that I want it to be used. And I'm like, you write that article. And then the next person looking for that use case will find your article and it'll be very helpful. So maybe we'll see that coming out of Leanne at some point. If nothing else, like a really quick thing to do could be like, just do a quick Loom video about it, just walking through your Collab code, just being like, here's this piece, kind of like you would do in a demo or something. Because then at least you like have that bit of video that you can either go back to and write an article on, or just like, you know, post your portfolio or whatever to show, you know, how to use context, which is brilliant. So, okay, we got a couple things today. We got demos to see all this incredible work. We've got a learning module on pair programming led by Scott. And then we will go over next week's issues. So without further ado, let's jump into demos. Who wants to go first?
It looks like Leah had to step away, so I guess me and Mabel, we can go ahead.
Perfect. Thanks, Fabrice.
I'll start sharing my screen. Just a sec.
Awesome. All right, team. So Fabrice and I are going to just cover the work that we did last week and how we tackle the issue at hand. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to navigate to the app. Okay, so as a user, right away, I see two choices. I can either create a new list or I can join an existing list. And so at this point, luckily, my friend already created a list, and so they share a token. So I'm gonna go with the second option. And so I'm not sure what the token was, but I think maybe it was something like hello. So I'm just gonna type in hello, and I'm going to try to join that list. And oops, no, it's not a token. So I'm gonna try it again. And I think it was 3 words. So I'm gonna go ahead and type in just 3 words, cozy, that looks good. And I'm gonna join. And right away, I can see that my friend wants to buy some bagels, and I can go ahead and add more items to the list. And that way we can collaborate, you know, even if we're long distance. So super awesome. So yeah, so if we go ahead and add something else, and then we go back to the list, then we can see that, hey, we're still working with the same list. So
incredible. I love
awesome.
it.
And so the way that we were able to accomplish this was by implementing the context API. And so the first thing that we did, just following the React documentation, was create a context. So in the tokencontext.js file. So here we're just saying to React, we would like to create a context, and we're passing in just an object. And next, React says that with every context, we need to have a provider. So in the token provider, so here what we're doing is we are creating 3 pieces of information, actually 4, that we want to make available to all the various components that want to consume this information. So based on feedback on our pull request, we are going to be revising this. And ultimately, the only thing that we're going to share is the token. And so just by having this here, any component that is a consumer will be able to access this data. And so if you go to the use token hook, we can see that we have this use context, which is a hook that allows us to consume the data. So use context is going to return the value that's inside the provider. And so anything that we have in there, we can pull out as we need it. So I just felt like this is super useful and helpful. And like some of the documentation, they had an actual like consumer, and I just found that that was a little bit like too complicated. So I think that this is nice and neat. And so if we go to the welcome component, which is the main component where we added our form, if we stop over in line 15 and we take a look at the use effect, the first thing that we're doing is we checking if there's a token. And if the user already has a token, then we want to just navigate them to that list. And they don't even see anything that happens in the welcome component. So now if we scroll a little bit down and we can see the form that we added in, it was just one input and just a submit button. And then at the end in line 70, we are saying we're adding this message to let the user know in case they, gave us like something, a wrong token. So that's how we're implementing that. So now if we go up to the handle submit, which is whenever the user is done entering the token, they feel confident that they have the right token, then at this point, we want to make sure that we query the database. So we're going to go out into the database and we're going to find out if there is an item that has that token. And so this documentation, pretty much from Firebase, very clean. And their Firebase is actually providing this snapshot, and it's an object. And they actually have this property called empty. And whenever that empty is true, that means that whatever I'm searching for is not in the database. So at that point, I don't want to do anything else. I just want to show them the error. Otherwise, if they did find something, then we feel confident that there is a list. And so we can set the token and we can navigate them to the list. And that happens in line 42. And yeah, so that's how we implemented the task. And now we're open for any questions or feedback.
This looks fantastic. Eve, I know you had some comments on the PR. Did you have anything that you wanted to add?
Oh, no, absolutely. No, absolutely. I'm just contradicting myself in my first sentence. No, Mabel definitely mentioned my feedback on the context provider. And yeah, so essentially, I just talked about how they're providing kind of 2 ways to get access to that token. And I was suggesting to find a way to only do it once. And so essentially, I mean, I'm not going to go into the details of what I suggested unless you want to, but I just wanted to make sure if the team was comfortable with my feedback. Like, did that make sense to you folks?
I think it was clear, and it was super helpful that you also included an example of how you had implemented that in the past. And I also took a peek at, you know, the work that Leanne and Leah did. And so, you know, it looks really clean. And so I'm thinking that I'm going to combine like the two because they use effect inside of their provider. And so that's just another source that I'm going to use. But so far, I think it's very clear.
Perfect. That's awesome. Then yeah, it was kind of funny to me how like a couple of months ago I just came across kind of something very similar, and I was like, hey, maybe you guys can use this solution. So awesome.
So on line 40 to 44, where we're using that effect to check to see if there's a token and reroute the user based on whether or not there's a token, is that the token that's coming from your context?
Yes. So initially, the token is actually null because they don't have anything in local storage.
Mm-hmm.
But whenever on line 36, we check the database and we realize that they do have a valid token, at that point, we set local storage, and then that token is going to update and then reroute them to the list.
Cool. I love this. I love this way of accessing the token. Is there anything in like at the highest level in app.js right now that's conditionally rendering the welcome component?
Let's go. I think it's the private route. So I think that this was implemented last week, the private route, but here in line 38, previously we were looking at local storage, and instead we're just accessing token directly here.
I love it. This looks great. Really great work. Does anybody else have any thoughts on this one or want to know how anything works or is going to work after refactoring? Any thoughts?
How do you feel about React context?
That's a good question.
I think that with the hooks is a lot cleaner and understandable because I did try to use it in the past, and I would totally understand the provider part of it, but the consumer part will always throw me off. And so just looking at this use context and just pulling whatever data I need, I think it clicks for me.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's a challenging one to wrap your head around for sure. But great job. Really, really great job this week, you all. Wonderful.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions on Mabel and Fabrice's work, which I think that that's still an open PR and there's some refactoring that's going to happen before it gets merged, right?
Yes.
Cool. Okay. Well, we'll get that merged today or as soon as possible so that we can move on with next week. But brilliant job. And with that, we'll turn it over to Leanne and Leah.
All right, perfect. Leah, you are going to, if you would like to share your screen.
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. All right, so as a user, I am going to add an item to my list. Let's say, let's type in Kiwi, but I'm super excited about Kiwi, so I'm going to be, yeah. I'm gonna submit that. And then, is it good? Technical difficulties.
Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, at least I can see it.
So can you see the alert window?
No, I cannot actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I can see it. I can see the alert.
Okay, cool.
When you share your screen, you might need to do like share entire window or something.
Yeah, desktop. Okay. Can you see the alert window now?
There we go.
Yes.
Now we can. All right. So, so Kiwi already exists. So if we go to our list, we can see that we don't have Kiwi and giant exclamation points. We just have a regular Kiwi that exists, and that's it. We got to clear our database soon. So if we go back and add an item, and let's add an item that's not on the list. So let's say like pita chips, but put it in caps and add some crazy stuff to it. Yeah. All right, let's submit. And then if we go to our list, you'll see somewhere, thank you. Oh,
Well, I think we need to add like plus sign into the.
we will do that. So pita chips, technically, as you can see, lowercase, so that's good. We will have to add that character though to our regex. So if we go to the code, so you will see what we did. We're going to be looking at lines 10 through, I think it's like 30 something. So right now we made a variable for our database. Then we have this variable that we made called clean input, which takes our input value and then we make it to lowercase, and then we replace all the special characters. We did some regex. So inside the square brackets is all the special characters that we have. As you can see, we did not add the plus sign, so we will have to do that. And then we replace it with an empty string. And so then we go to our collections, we get a snapshot, and we map through the data twice. So we get the data name, and then we're saying, hey, if that item does not include the clean input, add that item because it's probably not in our database. Else, that we're assuming that item is in our database, and we're going to alert the user like, hey, that already exists. So that's what we did initially. Leah, if you want to talk about and switch over to the other branch and talk about.
Before we move over to the other branch real quick, which I cannot wait to see, when you go back in there to add that plus sign and send up that commit, there's one other thing that I noticed here that should be changed. On line 25, where we're adding the name to the database, let's add the original user input there so that we can make sure we're always displaying the item exactly how the user input it, because they probably input it that way for like a reason. They want to see it the way that they input it. So we want to submit the user's original input, but then when we're looping through, we want to clean the user's input and we want to clean what's coming back from the database. So like you'll map through the database, clean it all, and then map through it and match it.
Okay.
That makes sense. Sorry I didn't catch that before.
Yeah.
But that way they because you're like, I always like to call them Oreos with an exclamation mark. It's like, that's how I want to see it in my list because I want to be able to customize it. But this looks great. I love it. Great work.
Perfect. So Leah, if you want to talk about how we did it with context then.
Yeah, so the problem, like Stacy pointed out, with this function is that sometimes we will have to repetitive call database again and again. So imagine if the user enters carrots first and she forgets about it. And so the first time the user enters carrots and the carrots is saved into the database, that's the first call. And if the user forgets about it and enters carrots again, we will again call the database because we use get here. So that's like the second call to the database. And the user freaks out and types carrots in all caps. That's like a third call to our database. So to save redundant calls to the database, we decided to decouple the get logic into a context component. So okay, the stash first. Okay, so basically inside our context component, we created our context using create context first. And then we created a provider component that basically gets the latest snapshot from our database and saved it in the item state. And we provide the item's value to to our whole app. We wrap our app inside the context provider in here. So this way, our whole app can get the items data, and inside item, we just extract the data we need, items, using the use context hook. So that's how we refactor our whole logic using context and use context hook.
I love this so much. Brilliant walkthrough. That was incredible. One thing too that I'm seeing that like might be really cool here is, so here we're checking for duplicates, and so we need like the cleaned list, right? Like we just talked about, and then we need the cleaned item user input so we can match them up. Well, there's some other issues coming up where you want to be able to filter the list. So you start typing, you know, hot dogs, HO, and it's looking for the list for HO. And it's like looping through that list over and over again to see what matches that so that it can display it. So I'm wondering if using this beautiful context that you have in place, if we moved the like cleaning logic over there too, so that the context is now returning like the list that the user wants to see exactly as it came from the database, like all in caps with all the special characters that the user wants. And then it's also can return a cleaned list, so that anywhere we need to use the clean list, we have like an already normalized list. So you could use it in the add item component when you're checking for duplicates, and you could pull that clean list out of context. You can use it in the filtering feature where you're kind of like digging through the list to see if there's any matches, so that you just have like one place where you have all this cleaning up logic and you're just passing that list around too. So that could be something good to keep in mind. I think this is beautiful the way it is. You don't have to do that now, but just going forward, that could be like a fun idea, a way to kind of keep it all tidy, I guess. But brilliant work here. Anybody have questions on this context or how to use it?
Looks really good.
Yes, I love it so much. So basically, like now, anytime any of you on the team need to like get that list, instead of calling Firebase, you're not going to have to do that anymore at all, likely. You're just going to reach into this context and grab the version of the list that the context has pulled from the database. So this is like really beautiful, a really great way to get access to that list without having to hit the database over and over again, like Leo was saying. So great job.
I was wondering, like, what was the thought process with the regular expressions and kind of like the experience with it? Like, how did you get to that solution for your problem?
Not gonna lie, we Googled it. But I've used regex before, and one of the things that I was trying to figure out is spacing at the end. I know for spacing it's just a /s, but I was messing around with it, and anytime you like have a space in between, so if you have like red apples, it would take the space out between red and apple, and I don't want, like, we don't want that to happen. I just want like spacing at the end or spacing at the beginning to be it. So I've been looking around trying to figure that out. There's a really great site that you can type in regex code and it like tells you like what it's doing. And you have like a sample text and you can see like what it's doing. I can put that in the in our Slack channel. And so
you totally should. That would be great, right? Regex is one of those things that like it looks like really complex, and it totally is complex. And when people know it really well, I'm like, how? You are brilliant. But knowing like the basics of what's going on in like a line of regex is like really powerful, because it is something that like when I was going through boot camp and stuff, I was like, when am I ever going to use this? And now as a developer, I'm like, oh, I need to use this all the time. Got it. But like you can usually find what you need by using one of those tools or Googling. If you find out how to remove only the space, if it's at the end or whatever, like you're trying to do, keep the spaces in the middle and only remove them if they're in, that too would make a brilliant little micro dev2 post or something, because I'm sure tons of people are looking to do the same thing and have no idea how to do it. So empowering you, build that content.
There's a joke that I find kind of funny, which is it says that, you know, when you have a problem and you try to fix it, like you solve your problem with regular expressions, then you have two problems.
Yes, I love that. That's hilarious.
That's
And very accurate.
yeah, it can be tricky sometimes.
I love it. Well, great work this week. I think you made a note in the code of those few things that need to get updated. So you can update those. I think that this context looks good. I haven't reviewed the PR. Eve or Scott, have you had a chance to look at that other PR with just the context?
No.
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, if that one's good to go then too, feel free to merge all of those after these most recent changes are made, and let us know if you have any troubles, if you run into any kind of merge conflicts. And the same to Mabel and Fabrice, if you are making those changes and you have questions or deal with like merge conflicts, we're totally here for you and can help you through that. But brilliant work this week. Does anybody have any last questions about demos before we jump into the learning module? No? Good? Okay, cool. With that, moving right along to Scott leading us through a learning module on pair programming. Take it away,
Right.
Scott.
So I have been punched in the face, kicked in the ribs, and strangled unconscious, and this is still scarier than anything.
Oh, you're gonna do great. I have nothing but full confidence in you, Scott.
So I'm going to assume that you guys will tell me if you can't hear me or see anything here.
You sound, and this looks great.
All right. So pair programming. We have been pair programming for about 3 weeks now. So you've all been doing this. You've all had experience programming with everybody else on your team. And today we're just going to look at some tools for being maybe a little more deliberate and intentional about it. So pair programming, what is it? So at root, it is just two developers sitting at a computer, writing code, using one keyboard, passing it back and forth. There are a lot of different ways to do this. The paradigm that we're going to look at is called the driver navigator paradigm. And so the driver is the person who is actively using the keyboard, and they're thinking low level on the code. They're actually typing it in, getting into the editor, and at the same time, they are talking about what they're doing, what they're thinking, kind of in the same way that you might if you were doing like a whiteboarding interview. And they're doing this so that their navigator is not just seeing code appear on the editor, and they have some sort of context. Because the navigator is also paying close attention to this code. And they need to be able to be a sounding board for that, for the driver. So the driver is telling them what's going on. The navigator is being a sounding board, giving them guidance, asking questions. If they see a roadblock coming, they might branch off and go do some research, come back with that information. And so the navigator is thinking at a higher level of the code. So they're going to be, the driver is literally like driving the car, looking at the road, using the pedals. The navigator is looking at the road, but it's also able to scan out and look at the map, what their plans were, where they're going. Oh, there's a roadblock here. Let's get around that roadblock. So that's the driver navigator paradigm. One person is driving the computer, the other person is keeping the dialogue going with them and making sure that there's less blockage and that everybody knows what's going on. And so the difference between that standard pair programming and using one computer and working remotely is obviously you can't be on the same computer, which causes you need to, get through some more logistics around how to do this. So the first thing we're doing is obviously we're using Zoom or whatever your screen sharing preference is, and that sort of operates as your shared computer. And so the driver is the person who's actively sharing the screen and coding and talking about what they're doing, and the navigator is giving for feedback there. So that's how that's going. It's the only difference is that you're not in the same room, obviously. And so once you've accomplished a particular task, the driver can push their code up, the navigator can bring it back down, and then you swap roles. And it's really important to be swapping roles here. It's easy to have the driver just kind of do everything and take over an entire session. One way of potentially getting around this is do a little planning session before your pairing, where you're like, you've got your set of AC for your ticket, and you can break an AC up into like a number of different little steps. And so when you first start your pairing session, the driver, whoever's driving first, will solve that first problem, push it up, pull it, the navigator can pull it down, then they switch, now they're the driver, and they can work on that second one and keep going around until you finish it out. Another possibility is that, you know, that might not necessarily work for your way of doing things, and so you might just have a timer going. So it's like you just willy-nilly, you know, change positions every 25 minutes or something. But you definitely want to be swapping roles back and forth, because one of the keys here is that you're both responsible for the code. And if one person is doing all the driving, it's almost like watching a tutorial for the person who's not driving. In that, in the moment, it makes sense and they can see what's going on. But then later, if they have to delve into it, it's sort of like, wait a minute, I thought I knew what was going on. Now I have to go back and figure it all out. So if they're swapping roles, there's a tighter little iteration so that everybody knows what's going on. It's working directly with what's going on. And so some mindsets and attitudes here. Like I said, you want to keep in mind that you're sharing equity in this code. So it's both of your codes. It's not the driver's code. It's both of your codes. You want to be working together on that. It's not about teaching or mentorship. So the driver is not teaching the navigator. The navigator is not teaching or telling the driver what to do. It's an opportunity for both people to be learning. So this is a dialogue. And that's why that driver constantly talking and telling the navigator what they're thinking, what their process is, and the navigator feeding back on that. It's a dialogue so that everybody has equal share in the end result. And one way to keep that dialogue going is that the driver is seeking agreement before just going off and doing something. And the navigator, for their part, is asking questions about what the driver is doing, not just telling the driver, don't do that, do this. And so one thing to help keep that going, because, you know, it can be heightened environment sometimes when things are not going well. So one thing to keep that dialogue going, even at the worst of times, is to keep a beginner's mind, to stay open to other people's ideas, to be eager about hearing other people's ideas, and to put aside your own preconceptions about how you would normally go and do things. Because sometimes you'll have two different approaches, and you can easily spend a lot of time figuring out, like, you know, well, no, just disagreeing on which approach you want to take. And so if you put aside those preconceptions, be open, it's easier to just, you know, even if it's just flipping a coin and saying whichever one, this will choose which idea we go with. And then you can, you know, just keep some progression going. You always want to keep that momentum going. And so you just choose an approach, sorry. So you can just choose an approach, and if it doesn't work out, you can always go back to the other one. You've lost nothing really. And so that's why putting aside your preconceptions, keeping an open mind can help move things forward. So does anybody have any questions about that at this point? No? All right. I'm going to ask another question. So how is this aligned with your pair programming so far in the last 3 weeks?
I love this. This was super helpful to see. But yeah, like, do you think that this is how you've been doing it? Have you been doing it other ways? Like, we want to hear like what's been working for you, or what you're eager to try after hearing what Scott had to say today, and just learning more about how pair programming is for you.
I would say, for me in particular, Scott, you mentioned as far as the navigator view, not falling into just remaining into that, um, I guess that position when pair programming, because just like once you actually end up getting in the code, you think that you're familiar with everything because of the perspective you had when you were navigating. But once you hop in and try to get in there, it's almost as if you had no idea what was going on. And I would say that definitely, unfortunately, has happened to me.
Mhm.
So I feel as if for me, just making a mindful, just being intentional also about making sure that, I always dive in at some point just to become more familiar and to really own what's going on as far as, the code and what's being figured out.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, both of these roles are super active. There are no passengers in the driver navigator paradigm. They're both, and that's why the switching roles and making sure you're switching roles, even if even if you haven't completed a particular task, like making the conscious decision to switch regardless,
Mhm.
so that you have the opportunity to work with it.
Yeah, you're both exactly right here. Like the roles of the driver and the navigator both offer so much. And like by playing both roles, you grow this like diverse skill set that you're not going to get if you just do one of them. So it's super important to, set the timer and switch, finish a task and switch, whatever way you can to get your hands on all of the code and your mind working high level on the code is going to set you up for so much more success. And I found like being a developer that literally the way to grow is just by like going through the motions and repeating the stuff and doing it over and over and over again and just like learning how every little piece of the code works. So the more that you can do those things and go through those motions, the quicker you're going to learn and the quicker it's all going to sort of sink in and you're going to have more experiences to play on when you move forward and do other tasks. So that's brilliant. What about the rest of y'all?
I know for like this week, Leah and I, like every time we met, we would just switch roles. Like, oh, do you want to type this week? Or, oh, I'll share my screen, or not this week, but like today. And like, oh, do you want to share your screen today? So we've done that. I know in my boot camp, we had bigger groups. We had more so like 4 people in a group when we would do pair programming. And we used this thing called Mobster, which would like tell you the time, and then it would like switch the screen for you, like, all right, it's time for Leah to be the driver. And so I can put that in the Slack as well if that would be helpful. It might be,
Please do. That's awesome.
yeah, it's, I don't know if it's for Windows. I definitely know it's for Mac. But yeah, definitely have noticed that one thing I feel like would be a little bit helpful is more commits. Like after we switch, do a commit. I noticed that because I go back and read my commit messages, like, what did I do here? What was this? And when you're reading it, you're like, oh, we did a lot in one commit. So I feel like just breaking it up by having that switching more often. So then you're committing more often. And so then the code's easier to read.
I love that. I love that so much. Committing is something that like people can be super opinionated about. But personally, I love overcommitting. Commit all the time. Commit early and commit often. And this is one of those things where we're like, when you do code reviews, you shouldn't be focusing on like these like silly little things that technology can help us solve. And squashing commits, if there happen to be too many of them, is something that we can like allow our tooling to do for us. So if anybody is ever like, you're committing too much, be like, great, let's work squashing into our GitHub actions so that every time we merge a PR, it squashes all of them. So I don't have to think about it and I can commit in a way that is helpful for me to learn and grow. So yes, I love that. I love the idea of you sharing the tools that you've used to pair program in the past, because there are some brilliant tools out there that like will allow you to work on the same, IDE and stuff. So if you come across cool ones, try them here. Like Collab Lab should be a great place where you can explore these things and try new things and share your experiences with them. We'd love to hear it. you guys are probably like, she sounds like a broken record. But if you try these new tools, write a blog post about it, because it'll be really interesting for like other people who are looking to pair program to see what your experiences were with those tools. Content generation machines, go, go, go. Anybody else want to share like pair programming experience so far?
I think that I really like breaking tasks into smaller kind of like steps. And so that's one way to easily like find a breaking point. So if you create a list and there's 10 items, you can say, okay, so I'll take these 5 items and then you can implement the other 5. And so that's, I think I found that to be helpful. And not only that, but it makes the task seem less overwhelming when you know that it's just this collection of steps that you have to do, rather than look at everything as a whole, because then that could be intimidating.
Absolutely. I love that. Where have you all been finding you're organizing those things? Like, are you putting those in like the GitHub issue, or are you making it in your PR description? Like, where's the best place you found to organize those thoughts? Slack threads?
Usually, in my experience, just the comments section. So where we have the acceptance criteria. So read it and try to figure out what each step, what it is that we have to do, and just put it in the comment section.
Yeah, I love putting stuff there too. That's where I prefer to do my organization as well. But you're totally right. The planning plays such a large role in your like efficiency and your ability to like keep focused when you're tackling an issue. Like, one thing that I struggle with is like getting a task handed to me and like, oh, I'm going to jump right into the code and start coding. And then I have to like rewind because I like missed something that I could have easily caught if I would have taken time to plan high level what my approach would have been first. So good for you. Kudos to you for planning. That's a big deal. I'm very proud of you for saying that. More planning. Anybody else?
Yes, I've been on the other side where I've definitely regretted not planning. And so even if it's just drawing in a piece of paper, like just a box, and then doing yes or no and something like that. I
never regret planning.
Yeah.
You're never like, I shouldn't have spent so much time planning. So good for you. Any other thoughts, pair programming? This was a brilliant presentation. I loved it. Scott, thank you so much for sharing. Leah, did you want to share anything? I don't want to cut you off or anything. Okay, Eve?
I guess another thing about pair programming that I enjoy very much, and you know, it's not something that's fresh in my mind, but something I did a little while ago, but I was really struggling finding the cause of a bug, and having somebody else help me with this. Like, we're both looking at the screen, and I'm, you know, really digging into my theory of what the problem is, and it's like, oh, what about this? And I'm like, it's in the middle of my face. Like, it's in like, what expression is, like, it's just right there. And because a fresh pair of eyes looked at it, I was able to find the bug. And I think that's a great advantage of doing pair programming. That's like having two brains working on the problem with different approaches. It can be very, very fruitful.
Absolutely. And just having that person there, even if you're not necessarily pair programming, like at work, sometimes I'll like call in another engineer to be like, can you just watch me for a minute? Because if somebody's like watching you, then you have to like really think about like what you're doing and what you're saying. And it'll usually lead you to like, oh, I actually see what's happening here. Like, don't say anything. I can see it. But it's helpful to just have somebody kind of like there so that you can like focus a little bit better. And another like brilliant thing about pair programming that I think for me is one of the most important pieces of pair programming and why I love it is it gives you the experience talking through these things, talking through these concepts. Like, I don't know if I've ever taken the time to explain context to somebody. And so I was on office hours with Leanne and Leah the other day, like trying to talk through context. And I was like, wow, I really need to like practice talking through context so I can like more coherently explain what it's doing and where all the pieces go. And just having them there for me to like talk through that with was really helpful. And so it's like, the more you do that, the more you can talk through it, the easier it becomes. So next time I go to explain it to somebody, it's going to be so much more organized and thoughtful because I've done it before. You know, so if you've never talked through a concept before, if you go into an interview and they ask you about it, like, oh, if you need to check for duplicates in this list, how are you going to do it? Well, if you pair program through the whole thing, you have a much clearer vision and can articulate what needs to happen. And you're just going to sound great. And you're going to sound like you know what you're talking about. And it's going to be so much more comfortable for you. So practice talking through things. Say everything out loud. Even if you feel like you're saying too much, know that you're probably not saying enough, that you should continue saying more, because it's just good practice. So, okay. With that, any last questions or thoughts about pair programming? Are you all liking pair programming? It's good, it's good. Maybe put you out of your comfort zone a little bit, but is probably a good thing in the end for you. But, okay, so with that, I will turn it over to Eve, where we will go over what we're doing next week.
Absolutely. Thank you, Stacy. Let's see if I can do this the right way. There we go. All right. So again, great work, everybody. That was really cool. Use context, regular expressions, tokens, everything looks great. So this coming week, we have, so I took a look at the board and it seems like everything is in place so far. So these two issues are just so close to the finishing line, but we are almost there. So I'm confident you guys will get it done super soon. So before we actually dive into the issues, you can go to the Slack channel as usual, and our pair bot, or peer bot, I don't know, you can just say it whatever way you fancy. You can just say you're French and you'll be forgiven. So it looks like we have Leanne and Fabrice working together this week, and also Mabel and Leah in a different pair. So let me know if you want to switch things around, or if it's fine with you, then that's great. You have your threads in the channel already, so feel free to exchange as much as you want, as usual. You know the drill. All right, so for issues, we have 7 and 8 this week. So 7 is right here. Let's open it up in full. So the story is, as a user, I want to see a welcoming prompt to add my first item if my list is empty, to help me get oriented to how the app works. So that's the title of the issue. I think it pretty much sums it up pretty clearly. In terms of acceptance criteria, we have just one, which is that the list view, when there are no items to display, should show a prompt. So a button would be a good way to include a prompt for the user to add their first item, and also to the liberty to add the wireframe. So maybe we have visual to support a little bit the idea behind that issue, which is, so essentially we're talking about something that looks like this with this little prompt right there, the add item button here. So it feels pretty straightforward to me. There might be some catches. I think, for example, right now, I know our app kind of doesn't let you create a new list. So, you already have kind of like this default list. So you might need to clean up the database a little bit to be able to see an empty list. So there might be some gotchas there. But are there any questions about this particular issue? And Stacy, is there anything to add to it, by the way?
I think that's great. Any questions? Anything unclear about it? Any ideas about like where you might start? Like, one thing that comes to mind to me is, given what we saw in demos today, anybody have any idea where you might check to see if there are any list items?
Would you use your context and see if there's already something in the context? I have a quick question. Is this going to be a new component then? And then like, it's like a component that's like, all right, add item. And then you hit that add item and you're routed to the add item component? Or is it going to be part of add item? Or is this something we decide on our own?
It's really a great question. I think it's up to you. What do you think you would want to do there? Does anybody have any ideas of what you think would flow nice or look nice, or how you might organize that code?
We'll probably put it in
I guess it could route to the add item. the add item page.
Which
Because
one?
at least in the wireframe, it's an add item button.
Totally. Mabel, did you have ideas too?
Yeah, I said I would put it in the list component because the list component will be empty initially. So I would just put it
That's
there.
good. That'd be good. Any other thoughts? There's no like wrong answer here. I mean, there probably is a wrong answer, but I'm not hearing any of them. And there's so many different ways you could do this. So
Yeah, we need a second database for this. That would be the wrong answer.
yeah, that would be a wrong answer.
We need a third-party API.
Yeah, but there's like so many different ways you all could do this, and I think you're all totally on the right track here. But as far as like components go, like you could get really granular. Like there could, the 4 things we see on this page, actually there's kind of like 5 things. There could be like several different components that we're just looking at right here. So maybe your list, is a component. And then maybe you also have another component that handles this functionality that you just, conditionally render in that other component, like, or something as a child. So many ways you could do this. You be creative, use your troubleshooting, your problem solving skills, I guess is where I'm going. You all are brilliant and have done an incredible job. So I have no doubt that you're not going to complete this one with flying colors.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Okay.
All right.
What's up next?
Let's look at issue number 8. All right, let's open this up. Oh, sorry. Come on. There we go. So number 8, as a user, I want to mark an item on my shopping list as purchased so the app can learn how often I buy different items. So in terms of acceptance criteria, we have 2 this time. And so first one is the user is able to tap a checkbox or similar UI element to mark an item in the list as purchased. And the second one is items should be shown as checked for 24 hours after the purchase is made. So for example, we assume, we assume the user does not need to buy the item again for at least 1 day. So, all right, so we have a checkbox that kind of can look like that if you want. And so there's, I guess the important part of this ticket issue is the idea of like 24 hours. So this might be kind of a hard problem to solve. So how are you going to check that it's going to be 24 hours? Are you going to use third-party library, or are you going to use like the date object in JavaScript? How do you compare time from now and the past and that kind of stuff? So that can be an interesting part of like working with dates in JavaScript, which is a whole kind of worm actually sometimes.
Yes.
In this case, you should be fine, but in JavaScript and dates are a whole. It could be a very, it is actually, I'm going to go on a tangent now, but JavaScript and dates is the thing. It
can be challenging for sure.
Exactly, yeah.
Any questions on this one? So when you're looking at the wireframe, it's really just the checkbox that we're seeing there that needs to happen. So ignore the details and the delete and everything. Just that checkbox. And so can you think of like what's in the database right now that you might need to update when this checkbox is clicked?
So we have that last purchase, which we have currently set to null. So probably use that. I love that idea. Question. Sure. What is this use in area label for? What?
Yeah, right there, that sticky note. So ARIA label is geared towards accessibility. Mm-hmm. So as far as I understand this, I think it just wants to make sure that if you have like some sort of like accessibility device, or like if you have maybe a screen reader or something like this, there's a way for these users to understand if what is the status of that purchase. Is that right, Stacey?
Yeah, that's totally right. And I'm curious to know, like, this is where the wireframe is a little confusing, like what issue that's a part of. Can you pop back over to the issue so I can see what the acceptance criteria for this one is? This one is tap a checkbox to mark an item as purchased. Item should be shown for purchased for 24 hours. Okay, so there's no calculation going on yet. When we added the soon, not soon, whatever the third one is, how is that being displayed in the list right now for us users to see visually?
It's not being displayed. We're just assigning it a value behind the scenes, like whether it's a 7 or a 14 or a 30.
Cool. So what we might need to do, and we'll have to look at the future issues. I don't know if this is something we were supposed to implement before that we missed, or if it's something that's coming up, but I'll double check and see. But we'll want to like make sure that users can see that on the list. So maybe just for now, we would put like a dash, not soon. Like eventually you'll probably like color code them. And that's where the ARIA label really comes into play, because if you're a user and you're looking at the list and you can see it with your eyes, you can see things like distinctions with color, unless you're colorblind. But if you aren't and you're using some kind of assistive technology like a screen reader, then we also need the screen reader to know how soon you're going to need to buy the item too. And the screen reader is not going to say like, this item is red, so you probably don't need it for a long time or whatever it might be. So we give it an ARIA label to say not soon or whatever it might be, so that people using screen readers can also understand when they're going to need to buy that item again.
So I guess in this case, it could be like that area. And so the area label is an attribute. It's an HTML attribute. So, you know, on a HTML tag, you have ID. ID is an attribute that you have on HTML. ARIA is another attribute you can put on HTML and will be understood by accessibility device tools. And so it could be something like, you know, the label says purchased or not purchased. You know, it could be something as simple as that, I believe.
Totally. Yep.
Yeah, that's
Great
a good
question.
Absolutely.
Anything else on this one? Checking the box, adding a box, checking a box, setting a date, it sounds like, in the database, and then reflecting whether or not that box should be checked from the front end or not. Any other questions there? You'll probably have some once you dig in, which is totally fine. We are always here.
Absolutely.
Good.
All right. So if there's no question, then I guess we can go towards choosing who does what. So Leah, Fabrice, Mabel, Leah, is there any preference towards one or the other?
We can do the first one if the other group doesn't mind.
All right. No, not to me. No, I don't want to do this. That's hard. All right, so I'll remove myself. And so this is Leon. And I'm saying Leon is working with Fabrice. Awesome. All right, so we can move this to in progress then. Ooh. All right. Here we have Leon right there, and Mabel. Awesome. Perfect. And move this to there. There we go.
Amazing. Right. Okay, so I think we still have a couple things that need to be wrapped up to kind of close down the issues from this week. I would say just continue working through those. Go ahead and get your pairing scheduled for next week, but let's try and get those PRs cleaned up and merged end of day today, end of day tomorrow, whatever's feasible, so that we can hit the ground running next week and build this cool new functionality. Any questions on that?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Do we have all the mentor reviews in that we need at this point?
I'm not totally sure. Does anybody need more mentor review?
So
you can ask us.
Oops.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So yeah, so this one I have reviewed. This one I think they Mabel and Fabrice just need to do a little update, and then we should be good.
Cool. So if you need a second set of eyes, or if you need help with anything, just tag us in Slack, and we'll get in there and we'll get this pushed into shape.
All right, and I guess a couple of little announcements. So I'm doing an office hour this week. So yay! So I'll be there on Thursday at 5 p.m. For an hour. So come and hang out if you want to. And also, we are starting doing talks, like the Collab talks, every other week. And so the first one is going to be this Wednesday at 5 p.m. And it's a Weston Thayer, I believe is how you say his last name, who is giving a talk. He's from Zapier, and he's giving a talk about assistive technologies. We are talking about area labels just a minute ago, and he's talking about assistive technologies. He has created a startup called Assistive Labs, and he's very familiar with like what it's like, you know, when you are visually impaired, what is this experience is like, and he's very he really believes that, you know, accessibility is going to be becoming like one of the pillars of web development. So I think it's going to be a great talk, and it's going to be hands-on too. So you're going to get to try out accessibility on your own as well. So it's going to be a fun talk. So yeah, come join us on Wednesday. And it's a talk that's all for Collabs. So, you know, it's a safe environment, so you can ask all the questions you want, and you can engage as much as you want. And there's no bullies.
I love this. And thank you so much, Eve, for contributing. Eve is like heading our new Tech Talk initiative. And it's something that I'm super excited about because we do learning modules on really collaborative aspects of being on a software developer team. But having this extra, like these extra little nuggets of wisdom that we have access to and like a safe space to learn together is like really powerful. And I'm so excited. So thank you for putting this together, Eve. You are incredible.
Absolutely. No, it's my pleasure.
Anything else?
Is that 5 p.m. East Coast, West Coast for both events?
Like Pacific time, yeah. It's 5 p.m. Pacific time for the talk, and also 5 p.m. Pacific time for the office hours. I sent a Google Calendar invite, so if you didn't get it, let me know. I can send it again. But yeah, and you can simply say yes, no, maybe RSVP to it. Yeah, and there should be a link to the Zoom call meeting room in there as well. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Okay, with that, 3 minutes over, but that's not so bad. We did great, especially with those brilliant demos that were like incredibly detailed. I loved it. Thank you all. Brilliant, brilliant work this week. If you have questions, hit us up in Slack. Come to office hours, do amazing work, collaborate well, and let's learn together. Anything else? All right. Take care, everyone. Let us know if you need help, okay? Bye, everyone.
Bye.
See ya.